Ciao ragazzi, my name is Anthony. Welcome back on into Worldwide. It was so nice to message my friend Richie last night and say, hey, I got a little bit of time left. It's time that we catch up. And he was more than keen. And he has brought his partner in crime, the man that carries Richie on Serie A Sitdown. Am I allowed to say that or not? Really?
Yeah.
I just thought I'd start it off bad. So come on, man. We're meeting each other in the semifinals. There are no rules attached to this chat. With these two great gentlemen. So welcome to the Serie A Sitdown. Awesome. Frank and Richie, how you guys doing?
Is that why my back always hurts?
I'm the Salmacher to your layout, I guess.
Oh man, don't say that second last name yet, man, because I've already got nightmares thinking about what he is going to do. But most importantly, man, I'll start with you, Richie. It's really good to see you again. Yeah. How are you feeling, man? Did you expect this at the start of the Champions League? It's been a roller coaster of emotions. I don't buy into the narrative that either of our sides had an easy run, no matter how much people want to say that we may have. There is no such thing as an easy run in this tournament, and you're there. You're in the semifinals of the Champions League.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Frank and I talked about, we joked about like, oh, it would be nice if Milan made a deep run this year. But I think we both thought that if they made it to the knockout stages, that would be a success this season. Same thing with Inter, right? Inter had yet to get out of the group stages at that point. And so, the team wasn't performing as well as they were last year. So, there was skepticism, obviously, and had a difficult group. And I said, look, get to the knockout stages, and then I'll be happy with that, and then focus on the league and try to get top four again. Maybe at the early stages we're thinking maybe Scudetto, but we know that was high and gone after we saw Napoli. But this is certainly a surprise, a welcome surprise, and back to the pinnacle of European football with both Milan Giants, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll reserve the 2 or 3 minutes of pessimism about the league for the right to the back end of this video, because I just want to focus on what's important right now. Frank, I can just imagine how you felt at the end of that game, just knowing that Milan were going through to the semifinals. How did you think the Champions League campaign for you went as a fan, and also as someone who reports on your boys on a regular basis? Did you think that you'd be sitting here talking about a semifinal now? And little side question for the end of that: what more does it mean? What does it mean to have that cherry on top of the cake that is having it as a Milano derby?
First of all, I mean, my expectations are exceeded as well. When the group stage came out, when the group draw came out, and you saw Chelsea, Salzburg, and Dinamo Zagreb, you said, all right, we're going to qualify. Now it just becomes, who do we get in the round of 16? So back when the group stage was put together, I think you got to set the expectation that you will qualify, and that I think that reaching the last 8 would be a success. So that's kind of the perspective that I looked at it from. And when we drew Tottenham and we saw Tottenham starting to stumble under Antonio Conte, I said, this is very doable. So that's where I was with it. So, now I think Milan's playing with house money as it pertains to the Champions League, reaching the semifinals for the first time in 16 years. It's quite a sensation. I've been following Milan enough to now I've seen them in the semifinal of the Champions League numerous times, but it's been 16 years since I last saw them in a Champions League semifinal. So it's exciting, kind of already marking the calendar for when these games actually happen. But hopefully the players and the management aren't looking too far ahead. There's some pretty important Serie A games to play all of a sudden now that Juve got their 15 points back. But yeah, it's it's you don't take it for granted. I mean, when it's been 16 years, you really appreciate it as a Milan fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that if we were coming up against any other opposition besides our cross-city cousins / rivals, you would feel that element of, okay, if we go out, we go out. I'm very grateful for this experience, because I was talking about this with one of my best friends on the phone this morning, who's a Milanista, and he goes, I'd be so much more grateful and appreciative and happy to be eliminated in the semifinal, but we're up against each other. We can't lose, and neither can you.
I have first of all, I mean, just as an overall Serie A fan, I'm looking forward to the fact that there's going to be a Serie A team in the final.
Absolutely.
As a Milan fan, though, I will be disappointed if Milan don't qualify. I think that as well as good as Inter have been in cups under Simone Inzaghi, I think and I know this is an Inter podcast and people are going to hate hearing me say this, but I think Milan are the better team, are the better team and the better performing team going into these two games. So I will probably, if they don't make the final, I will be disappointed. I'll have to regroup and support Inter with a lump in my throat in the final. But I will be disappointed just looking at how Milan have navigated their way, through these, through the round of 16, through the round of 8. And yes, and Inter have done an amazing job too, getting through Porto and then getting through Benfica. But I go in feeling like Milan are the better team and the better performing team here going into the last four.
Yeah. Richie, what would you say? Let's just keep that concept going. Your initial thoughts going into the round of 16, because, I'm pretty sure the first kickoff is May 9, gentlemen. Is that right? The 9th of May?
Correct.
Yes.
So if that's correct, a lot can change between then. We've both got, I think, 2 Serie A fixtures to play in between then, in which players can still get injured or things can happen. So what are your initial thoughts going into it, Richie?
I actually have the opposite feeling that Frank does. I actually think Inter are the more dangerous of the teams, just because Milan's been playing stellar defense. There's no doubt about it, right? They're back to their swagger defensively like they were last year, that they won the Scudetto with. But I think Inter, what we've seen from them is a different beast in the Champions League. Meaning they're playing gritty. They can score goals though. They scored a lot more goals than Milan are scoring goals. And they just seem to have Milan's number this year, at least in the last 2 games that we played against each other. And I think it's, Milan would have to, for right now, I have Inter as a slight favorites at the moment. I just think it's mind games at the moment. I mean, like you said, with a game between these two teams in the semifinals, don't want to lose it. You don't want to lose it. I think ultimately I'm going to be happy if they end up going out to Inter, but you want to win that game. It's the rivals, like I said, it's a battle against their cousins. But I think just at this present moment, Inter are slightly a little bit better just because, they can score goals and it seems like every game they're scoring a couple goals, and they play some really tough Portuguese teams, which Frank and I talked about many times, how the Portuguese are not a team, not a league to be laughed at. So yeah, I feel, despite how good Milan play, I think it's gonna be tight, 2 affairs. It's gonna be a derby. You might even see some flares on the pitch again, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I'm excited for the derby, 2 over 2 legs. I think this is an ideal situation too. I think because I was listening to Sirius XM here in the United States, and they were saying like, "Oh, City and Real are the best teams," but like, wouldn't you rather have 2 games of Real and City, and then 2 games of the Milan derby versus 1 of each? So I'm excited for either way. It's gonna be a fantastic semifinals.
It really is going to be a fantastic semi-final. Well, before we talk about the other teams that are involved, I just wanted to stay on Milan for a second, because I have you gentlemen here who've been your bigger performers, your better performers, your worst performers. I want some of your specifics from the tournament. I saw both of your games against Chelsea, fantastic games, but that was all I was able to tune into live up until you got into the round of 16. I really thought Antonio Conte, with the athletes that he had at Spurs, would have at least pulled a little bit of effort out of his cooler. Never in Europe, this guy. Never. It's never going to happen for him whatsoever. No. I know they're not the best team in the world, but you expected them to put in a little bit more. Thank you to the 22 people that have joined us. Make sure you like the video as well. Subscribe if you're new. Richie, Frank, whichever one wants to go first. Your Milan perform, your flops, your tops.
I mean, I think the clear flop for everybody is Charles de Ketelare. Simply, it's just been but I don't want to be overly harsh on the guy, because I've made this argument many, many times on Serie A Sitdown. I mean, for every Kvaratskhelia that comes into the league and makes a splash in his first season, there's probably 20 guys like CDK. Okay, so that it takes a lot of these young guys coming in. It takes a year. It takes some time to figure things out. And then eventually they evolve. I mean, Rafael Leao wasn't off to the greatest start when he joined Milan at first. Let's not forget that. And then he turned into Serie A's best player last year. I'm not saying that CDK is going to follow that same path. I just don't want to just completely slam the door on what I think of him as a player. I just think he's just not lived up to, especially when Milan had to outbid Leeds United to get him. You want to expect a little bit more for the money that got spent. As far as the players that are top, I mean, I said this on our podcast the other night. I think Mike Maignan is the best goalkeeper in the world. And I don't want anybody else in net for Milan, for my team. That it starts with him. I think the defending, it's been a collective effort. I think that having Simon Kjaer for these Champions League matches has been essential, just to have the experience and have the calm back there, to be able to keep everybody composed and keeping from getting out of control. Fikayo Tomori man-marked Victor Osimhen out of the second leg until Osimhen scored in the end. And then Calabria was reasonable against Kvaratskhelia. So, I mean, the defense has been obviously very, very good. You have Leao on the counter going forward. And then I think that the midfield has also been very good too. I think another guy that I think you could say has been under the radar disappointing in these Champions League games is Theo Hernandez. And I think the attacking element more so. There hasn't been, you can just look at the first leg, the goal against Tottenham might be his most. He didn't score the goal. Brahim scored the goal, but his involvement on the goal was his most significant attacking contribution in these knockout stages. Okay. Other than that, he's just been asked to defend a lot. He's not able to put his imprint on the game going forward. So you can make the argument that he's a little bit of a disappointment. So, tops, Maignan, some of these defenders, Leao for what he's contributed on the counterattack, and then flops clearly CDK because, well, he's not even getting on the pitch in these Champions League games. But I think you can make the case that Theo Hernandez has not, lived up to the level of play that we expect from him.
Yeah, I probably echo that sentiment. I think for me, like Theo Hernandez, obviously CDK is the easy one to go for, but Theo Hernandez has not been the same offensive type of player that we were hoping to see in the Champions League, and it's been a lot of just Leao trying to do it all himself on the left hand side, and well, it's fine because Theo has been trying to focus more on the defensive side, and he's kind of improved that game. But offensively, he's been a flop for sure. And I think in terms of the tops, Mike Maignan obviously is number one. I'll go a different route than Frank. I think two unsung heroes when the team was struggling, especially in the group stages. And I kind of alluded to his name earlier, but right now we're calling him Salsicha Dona, Salamakers, and then Junior Messias.
I left him out.
Yeah, Junior Messias and Salamakers, they contributed big when Milan were struggling during the group stages, and they came up with goals. The only goals they had this season were in the Champions League, and they had scored some big goals for the team to help them get out of the group stages. So I think them, and also emerges of Krunic. We've always known him as a utility type player, but especially when Tonali or Benacer have not been playing to their best, Krunic just comes in and he does his job effectively. He's not the greatest star in the world, but he does his job perfectly every time. And it's someone that Pioli relies on. Every team has their pet, if you want, every teacher's pet, whatever. And Krunic is that for Pioli, and he trusts him with everything. So, those are some of my tops of this Champions League season so far.
No, well said, man. Just for shits and giggles and laughs, early predictions. First leg is your home game, I believe. Second is ours. It bears the lowest relevance it ever has now that the away goals rule is now obsolete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It'll now really be the only leg up now is the allocation of tickets to the colors in the stands.
I'm going to say, okay, so before I get my predictions, let me preface this and where I think these teams are at. Now, Milan have 4 Serie A games before these two hook up. And Inter have a total of 5 games, the 4 Serie A games that they have, and then they also have the Coppa Italia second leg against Juve. Yeah. So there's still plenty of games in front, and a lot can change. But eye test right now. This is a different Milan than the Milan that Inter faced in the Supercoppa and in the derby. Okay, let's go to the Supercoppa. Tatarusanu was in goal. Milan had really, really lost their way. Pioli continued to just want to play the same way, same system, and in counterattacking situations and in a lot of unpredictable scoring chances that was just easy to score on a guy like Tatarusanu. They changed for the derby to play a 3-4-2-1 and play more compact and play more low block and make opponents more predictable. And a lot of that had to do with Tatarusanu as a goalkeeper. If shots are going to come to him, make them easy ones that he can deal with. Okay, and that's what ended up happening for the most part. They're not doing that anymore. They've gone back to their 4-2-3-1. They play Benacer in the 10 role now. They play Diaz off to the right. So the middle is the middle is compact, and that's giving the Rafael Leao the newfound freedom that you saw, for example, in the second leg against Napoli, what he did to set up the goal for Giroud. I don't know if the current Inter lineup can cope over 180 minutes with that. I think that obviously, and listen, I don't think there's gonna. I'm not predicting a blowout by any stretch of the imagination. What I'm saying is that Milan are a lot different than they were in January, where Inter were able to rip them apart in the Supercoppa, when they were able to, snatch 3 points, when Milan were trying to figure some things out ahead of these Champions League games, and they kind of used that derby to do that. I think Milan win the home leg 2-1. And I think the second leg is a 1-1 draw. I'm putting Milan in the final. I have to do it out of, support for my team, but also to support what I'm saying about where I think Milan is at now. It's not that Inter is a bad team or have dropped off. I mean, and they've been very dangerous in cups under Simone Inzaghi. I think that this is a different Milan than what we saw, in January and early February when we had that Supercopa in the derby. And I think that there may be a little more difficult for Inter to cope with. Darmian has done well deputizing on the right side of a 3-man defense, in these Champions League games. But it's easy to keep João Mario in front of you. Okay. It's probably not as easy to keep Rafael Leao in front of you. So I'm going Milan winning on aggregate 3-2, 2-1 at home, and then 1-1 in the return leg.
Nice one. Fusion God very gracefully disagrees. Shout out to my channel.
He should. He's an Inter supporter. I'm not offended.
Absolutely. Shout out to my channel members. Love him. No away goals rule to save you guys this time. Matthias says we took down the Benfica attack. We're not scared. Oh, look at this
attack.
It's all fun.
I love it.
It's all fun here. I had to spend a good 5 minutes replying to a good 40 Benfica comments on one of my videos yesterday after we knocked them out. It's just too much fun.
Oh my god.
Richie
and I mean, before I know Richard, and you're going to get to Richard's comment, but I mean, did you really take down the Benfica attack? You gave up 3.
I was not happy with how he took our foot off the gas there. I know it was completely irrelevant.
You allowed Dusty Frederick Arsenis to score on you. And then Peter Musa, who's a substitute. I mean, these are the Benfica scrubs scored on you. I mean, if these guys really want to talk shit, we can do that.
We did. There was no João Mario goal over the 2 legs, which I think surprised most Inter fans, if not all of us, because we've made a nice habit of seeing players score against us that used to play for us, even of obscure angles on the pitch, like Candreva did the other day.
To your credit, though, no Gonzalo Ramos goal either over the course of the 2 legs, and a danger man for sure that you guys did a good job on.
Yeah, absolutely. Richie, how are you feeling at this initial stage? As Frank said, still so much football to take place before then, though.
Yeah, I was definitely buoyed by the fact that you guys allowed 3 goals against Benfica, right? That doesn't tell me your defense is that rock solid, though you've been playing really well defensively. And Pioli is the best in-game manager, at least in Serie A. It shows what he did against Napoli, right? He comes out with a certain tactic, but he changes it in-game and allows different pressures and stuff. He knows what the opponent's going to do and plays to their weakness. But I think it's a derby. The tifos are going to be fantastic in both legs. I can't wait for that. That's going to be the show just alone there. Milan's defense is too good to allow lots of goals at this current juncture. A lot can change, like you guys have been saying, but based on present form, I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if both teams score. I think I see like a 1-1 in the first game, just because it's a derby and everything that comes with it. Second leg, I'm still unsure. I kind of want to see how the teams are to kind of, I'm hoping Milan win, obviously, but I wouldn't be surprised if Inter win as well. But I think the way that Inter's been playing, the way Inzaghi has his team prepared for their opposition in Champions League this year and in Coppa Italia as well. And the fact that Milan they're good at the moment, especially defensively, you're not going to see many goals. I'd be shocked if you see more than 2 goals in this game, honestly. The way these teams are performing, you're probably going to see goals from people that you don't write. I mean, Correa probably show up. He's a Milan killer, right? And then probably on the Milan side, it wouldn't be surprised if like some guy like Salamaker scored or somebody random. So
expect anything basically.
Yes, absolutely. So I said 1-1 in the first game at least, and then second leg. I mean, I would not be surprised to go to extra time in the second game. But it's gonna be tight affair, and yeah, it's gonna be fun, and it's all eyes on Serie A. That's what I'm excited for. So.
Yeah, it is going to be very, very fun, man. So just quickly before we do move on to chat for a couple of minutes about Serie A, do you give either of us a chance when we go through to the final against Madrid or City? Frank?
I always say this about finals. I always say this about cup ties. You don't have to be better than what you're up against over the course. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to be better than them over the course of the season. You just have to be one goal better than them over a course of 90 minutes. Or over a course of 180 minutes. It's a completely different psychology than what you're trying to do during the season when you're looking at fixtures and things like that. So if you reach I give a team in a final a chance, regardless. And you see teams play better football than what you can sometimes anticipate. Now, what's going on that other side? You have Manchester City, who have been a juggernaut all season long, look like they're going to overtake Arsenal and win the Premier League. And then you've got Real Madrid and Carlo Ancelotti and the pedigree. Real Madrid. You see Real Madrid in the final of a Champions League. And you really can't say this about any other club in Europe when it comes to a Champions League final. If you're playing Real Madrid, you really you're not just trying to beat the 11 men that are wearing the shirt on the pitch. That is the one team that I would argue that you also have to overcome the mystique of them in this competition because they've won it so many damn times. So it's, if you ask me who would I rather see in the final, I mean, flip a coin. They have their own dangers, and it will be, whether it's Milan or Inter reaching the final, it will be a difficult task. But I will say, hey, when it's 90 minutes, throw what you've done during the entire season out the window. It comes down to one game, and anything can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tend to agree with that. I think if the final is a two-legged affair, I'd say zero chance for Milan and Inter, whoever, right? No matter what, our clubs are going to be the underdog. But as Frank said, anything can happen in one game. We've seen it numerous times. I mean, Porto won in 2004; they were underdogs. Anything can happen in a one-game playoff. And we've talked about it for a long time, at least in our podcast, Frank and I, that the Champions League DNA is a real thing. And the aura that comes with it, and Milan certainly have it, and Inter too with their three Champions Leagues. I mean, if it was this team like City, they got to look at that and be like, okay, look, hey, they got to be a little worried because these teams have the history of it, and that history can play a big role in these kind of games. Obviously, playing Real Madrid, they got a little bit bigger history, right, than both of our clubs. With nothing, and no disrespect for us, but it doesn't mean they're not beatable. These teams are not invincible. If they were, they'd be undefeated this season, and neither team are. As many goals they scored, as good as they are, as talented as they are, this game was set up perfectly, I think, for both Milanese clubs because both of our teams play well defensively, are disciplined, have Italian tactician masterminds, and they love to play on the counterattack. And that what you have going for it, because both these teams will play with a high line, try to push you out, try to control the park on one side of the field. You get a turnover, you get a Spitzer out there like a Leao or Lautaro or something like that, a Dumfries, anything can happen. And you go one-on-one against a goalie. I mean, I'd probably rate Onana and Magnon probably slightly above Courtois at the moment. Onana is probably more level with Courtois, but I think Magnon is by far the best keeper in the league. Not by far, but he's the best keeper in the world. So I think they have a puncher's chance. They have to hit the game, the tactics spot on. They got the managers to do it. Right, the tacticians that they are, sort of parking the bus and playing the old Catenaccio type style, but on that counterattack they can get them there, and no team is unbeatable. The defenses, I'm not impressed by either defense, honestly. So it's just attack. So if you can get to the defenses, anything is possible. And so yeah, I say there's a puncher's chance, but obviously both our teams will be underdogs.
I will follow up here and just real quickly and just make the argument that I think you would rather see Manchester City in the final because of the money that goes into that team and what they've constantly had to listen to year in and year out. Okay, fine, you've gotten it done in England and all that other stuff, but you've not brought home the cup with the big ears. Okay. They got to the final against Chelsea and they looked tight and they lost they lost the final to Chelsea. They got to the semifinal last year. They had a lead. They had it ready to close out in Madrid and they couldn't close it out. They're the team that I would rather see in a final. At the same time, psychologically, for the Italian teams, to Richard's point, there's nothing to lose for them in a final. Okay. And they're both going to be in either team, whether it's Milan or Inter, they're going to be in an environment that they're going to love to be in. They're going to counter. Okay. Inter is so good on the counter. Milan has been good at being organized, defending, and doing a good job of keeping you out, and they have the goalkeeping to go with it. So they can play their game in that final. They can play with nothing to lose. And I think that that's another thing that has to be said about whichever Serie A team gets to this final.
Yeah. Fair call. Very fair call. Before we move on to the last segment, which I just wanted to speak about Serie A and our struggles in Serie A, I wanted to open up to you, gentlemen. Is there anything that you would like to ask me from an Inter point of view and from an Inter fan base point of view, knowing that we are coming up against you in the semifinals in the city?
Well, what are your initial thoughts about the derby? Because we've heard our side, and then and if you were to go to the finals, how do you feel the prospects are for Inter or Milan in the final?
I think that every Inter fan is very surprised where we are considering the draw that we had. I know I said that both sides haven't had an easy draw, but I refuse to listen to anyone that says Inter had an easy draw just because we came up against Portuguese sides in the round of 16, which you've both acknowledged is no easy task on its own. And then you combine it with a group with Barcelona. Yes, I get it, everybody. It's a weak Barcelona in context to the Barcelona that we saw wipe their ass with football for so many years. But it's still Barcelona at the end of the day. It's not easy by any means. And they had so much riding on that competition and making a name for themselves. They weren't prepared to go down to the Europa League. No way whatsoever. And then you go up against Bayern Munchen, which, yes, again, not their strongest version of themselves, but they were still up here at that point of the season. You know, I know we've seen them struggle in the last 2.5 to 3 weeks, but I think that everybody was in agreement when they saw Inter get drawn out of that group. They gave us a very minimal chance of qualifying. The 2 legs against Porto, I really enjoyed because I felt that was where we played probably our most pragmatic football of the season. It was about containing a beast that was ready to come at us, that was excited to draw us in the round of 16. And I think that we did rattle them a little bit in that first leg by scoring that late goal, because there were large periods of time in that first leg where they were on top. And I don't enjoy watching games where Inter is on the back foot, but there is a certain amount of joy to be gathered in the Champions League when you do get that result over the line. Because like you boys have alluded to a lot, even just in this show, it's a cup competition. It's 90 minutes. You do what you need to do to get your ass over that line, over the 2 legs. And when you do, you don't look back. The second game in Portugal was amazing. I haven't seen such a game filled with such attitude from an Inter team in such a long time, because we've both had to watch our teams in Serie A in 2023 give off really bad performances that just don't hold up the badge on the front of the jersey whatsoever. So going into the Champions League and getting that over the line and drawing Benfica, you know, to me, it was a good team to draw because it was beatable. The same way when you guys drew out Spurs, I'm sure you did not look at the draw and say, Spurs, Conte, easy. You said Spurs, Conte, doable, beatable. Let's go. Let's get this done. And that's what we did with Benfica. And the Benfica fans were very happy to draw us. I mean, just go and look at the reaction video I did when I did the draw. They were in there in full effect saying how happy they were that they had not lost a game all season. Shout out to them, man, because as soon as they said that, they dropped 3 in 4. It hasn't been good for them. But being here, it's an honor and a privilege. It doesn't save the season that we've had in Serie A, unfortunately, because there are worse things to come. But it's important to be grateful at this point in time that we are where we are. I do think that we have a great chance at getting to the final because, once again, I'm just going to use the word beatable and doable in no context to who you guys are. It's a beatable fixture. Up against the final, I would say less beatable, significantly less beatable, no matter who you come up against. And I would have to agree with Frank at the end there. I think 49% of me wants Real Madrid, 51% of me wants Manchester City. Just for those small reasons there. So whatever happens, boys. It'll be nice just to be able to enjoy it. It really, really will. Do I have you guys for another 4 minutes to talk about Serie A?
Bring it on.
Serie A, what a shit show. What a storm. Juve, that's it. Good. 15 points back for Juve, regardless of what we think is right or wrong. It puts both of our clubs in a position where we probably need to win 6 out of 8 games towards the end of the season, 5 out of 8 games.
Or win Champions League.
Well, that's all in Champions League. Or actually, I haven't looked this up enough, so maybe one of you know it off the top of your heads. We've got a lot of representation in Europe. It's a good thing for us this season. Contrary to what, the struggles of Italian football, we're overrepresenting in the European tournaments. If Roma or Juve were to win the Europa League, would this open up a 5th spot to an Italian team to qualify for the Champions League? Because only if
the Europa League winner finishes 5th or worse in Serie A. Like if they finish top 4, if they finish top 4 and win the Europa League, all it means is that they get elevated to being a seeded team as the Europa League winner.
Yeah.
Right. So only if Roma or Juve were to finish outside of the top 4 and win the Europa League.
Yeah.
Right.
So it actually doesn't help us much at all because
not a present
would be there. No, it is not a present whatsoever. All right, cool. False dawns there.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's very important now then, Frank. It's very important where there's 8 do or die cup finals in Serie A now. Fun times. What a great way to end April and May.
I mean, in the case of Milan, I think the benefit for them is that they have teams that they're going to be playing here down the stretch that are direct rivals that they have an opportunity to take points from. They've got to go to Roma. I believe that's on April 29th. They get Lazio at home, but then second to last game of the season, they're at Juve. So there's games in there that they have opportunities to take points and then sandwiched in with games that they can win. So that's doable there. I haven't looked at the rest of Inter's fixtures to see, where those all fall.
It's not good.
It's okay. So they see a lot of the same opponents. I know you go to Napoli.
We see Lazio as well, Roma and Atalanta. We also have to travel to Torino on the last day. We also go up against Empoli this weekend, which is not going to be fun.
So I don't, so you really can't set in stone Lazio, Juve, and Roma as the remaining top 4. I mean, I think there's so many games here that are left where these teams are all going to cannibalize each other somewhat, and it's who can win those more of those direct rival games that are going to elevate themselves into that top 4. Serie A as a whole, I mean, what a year. And you talked about we got 5 teams in semifinals across 3 European competitions out of 12. I didn't know 5 years ago I would have told you you're crazy if that ever happened. If you say that's ever going to happen, the way Serie A was at the time. You've got the whole Juve situation, being docked the 15 points and now getting it back. And now that I've had a chance to kind of decompress from it, I don't like this, the sporting aspect of what Juve have done on the pitch. I don't want to see them get the 15 points taken away. What the guys did off the pitch. Yeah, you can certainly make the case that there's reason for that, for some kind of punishment to happen. So in a way, I'm kind of like, all right, I'm kind of okay with Juve getting their points back and making this a real test, to get back into top 4. I don't want to be one of these that just take a cheap spot that we underachieved, but still grab 4th. It's just, I'm crazy. I'm crazy like that. But the whole Juve situation and the scandal, Napoli playing at an elevated level for a long period of time throughout the season, the Serie A performances in the European competitions. I mean, you've got people talking about Serie A again, and it's been a long, long time since we've had that. Usually, whenever you wanted to talk about Serie A, you would only pretty much talk about Juve on a European landscape or on a world landscape, and that was it. But I think there's some respect being put to Serie A's name. So, and I think that's what's, this has been a really special year, and 8 games left and a lot of European games, which is why Richard and I are locked on doing our show on Tuesday nights now.
Yeah, it's nuts. Richie, your thoughts?
Well, I kind of agree with Mattia here because, while credit to Roma and Lazio for what they've done this season, we kind of saw this happening with Mourinho and Sarri in their second seasons. I think Champions League, in terms of Italy, Champions League needs both Milanese clubs, Juventus and Napoli in there, because I think those 4 teams would do the best against the rest of Europe. Though we've seen, the way Roma's been doing in European tournaments the last 2 years, they've done very well. But I think Champions League it's another elevation of teams, different animal. And I think obviously Milan, Napoli, and Juventus or Inter this year have all proven that they have the mettle to go deep. And Juventus has shown in the past they can do it too, but maybe not so much in recent past. But I think those are the 4 best representatives in terms of European play for Italians. And so, the 2 Milanese clubs have a lot of work to do, right? The 2 Roman clubs have got there on merit. They played very well. Obviously, we don't like seeing Juve getting the 15 points back. But if you look at if you actually are honest with ourselves and say who are the 2 best teams in terms of getting results, it's Napoli clearly, and then Juventus. Juventus went on a long win streak. Great. Lazio doing fantastic things, but Juventus have been phenomenal the last couple months here. And I think the big thing with our 2 clubs is that we're playing well against teams we should be playing well in the top rivals. But when we play these teams that are like bottom feeders, that's where we're struggling. I mean, you guys lost last week, and we're losing to teams like Lecce and stuff like that, and you can't get results like that and expect us to stay in the top 4. You have to beat those teams. You beat the teams you're supposed to, and then do well against your rivals. And our 2 clubs are not getting that aspect of beating the teams you should. And so we have 8 games left, like you said, for both of our teams to kind of figure this out. Not only do well against our direct rivals who will cannibalize each other, but also these teams that are winnable. Get it done, and then you can maybe have a chance there at the top 4. So we'll see. It's been very, I know for us, I know you guys feel the same way, is that it's very frustrating when you play well against a good team and then you play a team that is winnable, like an Empoli, no disrespect to them, and then you lose to them. And like, what the hell's going on here? It's frustrating. And our fan bases are crazy. All fan bases are crazy and saying, why are you guys rotating, right? We go on this in our podcast. And it's like, you have to, if you're trying to go deep in the Champions League or any other tournament, you have to rotate guys. Otherwise, you're going to kill your guys like Sarri did with Napoli's, several years ago. So,
I see the point to the, beating the bottom, needing to beat the bottom half teams consistently, but as while we're disappointed when that doesn't happen, shouldn't that be a credit to some of these bottom half teams, because the way that some of these teams have been constructed, and the way that they've scouted and assembled their teams, they've put something competitive out there. Yeah. There's not a lot of teams. I mean, you even look at right now, to me, the only team that looks like they're out of it, they're short of ideas, there's really nothing to unlock anything, is Sampdoria. I mean, even Cremonese have players that can hurt you. So there's a little bit of that going on, and maybe that's an indictment on the top teams like an Inter and like a Milan for taking those teams lightly, but at the same time, it's a credit for those teams for building their teams smartly to be able to be competitive with the better teams in the league too.
Yeah, very fair as well. Who's your player of the season so far, gentlemen? And that'll be our finishing sentence for your club. Just one Milan player so far.
Oh, for Milan, okay.
Yeah, I was thinking League One.
Oh wait, if you were league-wise, it's just a little tough at the moment for even me to sound. But if the season was to end today, could you pick one?
League, Kvaratskhelia.
We're doing Serie A, the whole Serie A.
For the whole Serie A, yeah.
Whole Serie A, all right, cool, yeah. I would agree anyway.
And then Milan, I will. I'm going to say Mike Maignan. Because I mean, not just the value that he has been on the pitch, but how badly he was missed off the pitch when he was hurt, and how poorly Tatarusanu played.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. In context to him being there and not being there, it was just day and night. So yeah, in terms of being a difference maker, he really was the biggest one. Richie?
Yeah, I mean, Mike Maignan not being there arguably cost Milan their top 4. Right? He's that good to them. He is an MVP. But I'll go with a guy who is putting up same numbers as last year, but is not getting the same love as he did last year. That's Rafa Leao. Leao, if you look at the numbers of MVP season compared to this year, they're almost identical. This year, yes, he struggled a lot, but that's because everyone got to see his best, and Italian clubs do this best is they adjust. Rashelia will learn this next year when he has to go against these teams where they will adjust and know what his strengths are and force him to beat him another way. They did have Leao this year, and he struggled, but over the last month or so, he's turned it on, and his numbers are equally the same. And he may have actually more goals and assists this year than he did last year. So he is quietly my MVP. Doesn't look like it, with optics, but because Magnon is obviously the number one. But I think Leao deserves a good shot too because he's still putting in the numbers despite the new adjustment from all the defenses trying to counteract what he does so well. And it's hard to stop his pace, but there's other things people are doing well to stop him. So
yeah. Fair call there. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It was great to have Frank and Richie on from Serie A Sit Down. Any parting words, and let anybody in the comments who lives under a rock know where they can find you.
Oh, okay. Well, you can find me at FTC_21. Serie A Sit Down, just as it sounds, at Serie A Sit Down on Twitter. Give us a follow over there. We have our own YouTube channel as you do, Anthony. We have our own channel on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud. We're on Stitcher. I mean, wherever there's podcasts, there's Serie A Sit Down. So we're not hard to find. Yeah, Twitter's a great place. We also have a fun hashtag game. We got it's called Who Won Calcio Twitter. So if you find anything funny, Calcio related, hashtag it Who Won Calcio Twitter so that we can read it on air.
Yeah,
brilliant.
And Frank always goes last on our show, so I'll go last this time. Yeah, follow us at Serie A Sit Down, and then a little plug for our website, SerieASitdown.com. I'm gonna try to put a piece of article together about is Calcio back to being the kings of Europe. The article will come out here in the next couple of days here on the backs of five teams in the semifinals here, so in European play. So yeah, look out for that. And yeah, you can this. You don't have to follow me. You can just follow Serie A Sit Down. That'll be good enough.
Brilliant. Thank you so much to the gentlemen. Thank you to everybody that came by in the comments. I will see you very, very soon for some Empoli content. Ooh, not looking forward to that. Ciao.